Hello, welcome to English Master's new series Daily Lesson. As the name says it all, we are going to take a look at each lesson every day in this series. And today's lesson is going to be focused on the origins of languages. All of the information proposed in this video is adapted from the book The Study of Language by George Ewell. So what are the origins of language? How did language first come into being? Today we are going to study four most popular sources of language proposed by different theorists and linguists around the world: the divine source, the natural sound source, the oral gesture source, and the physiological adaptation. So we're going to start first things first with the divine source. What is meant by the divine source? Again, as the name says it all, divine. Divine means to be related to God, godly, holy, coming from God. So when we say language has a divine source, that means language, firstly, it came from God. When God created humans, certainly He would have wanted His humans to be able to talk to each other and to be able to worship Him. Using language to worship God certainly must be one of the important functions of it. The best evidence of God creating language can be cited in the Bible. Genesis, when God created Adam and Eve, He also said, "Whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof." The act of naming things was the first recorded use of language, not only in Christianity, but in other religions as well. However, when we say the divine source, it means this is a scientific theory, and a scientific theory has to be supported by scientific evidence. Meaning there has to be experiments with proof to prove that language actually came from God. Two recorded experiments have been found. The first one was done by a pharaoh. His name was Psammeticus in 600 BC. And the second person was James IV of Scotland. These two people noticed and kept track of little children who were left to grow up without the presence of their fellow humans, and without exposure to language and spoken words. They somehow managed to be able to produce language for some unknown reason. Yet, if we consider the small number of children who could speak without being exposed to language, with the vast numbers of children who grew up without human beings and who were not able to speak, the statistic proved insignificant. And so the divine source doesn't seem to be a highly viable source. The second source of language is the natural sound source. So what is meant by the natural sound source? How is it different from the divine source? Certainly language now doesn't come from a God anymore. It comes from the natural sounds. The key word for the natural sounds is onomatopoeic. I say again, onomatopoeic. This word means language reflects the sounds of nature. Whatever the sounds of the animals make, whatever the sounds that things make, can be reflected in the language. So first things first, let's take a look at some of the animal sounds that have been reflected in the use of language. The most common examples can be these. When a bird says cuckoo, 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 that's it. And I'm sorry, onomatopoeic, right? It's a very difficult word to pronounce. Cuckoo, this is the sound of a bird, and it came into the language itself, not only in English but in other languages as well. With the sound of a cat, for example, meow, this also has become a word in English. Or for example, when a dog bark, 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 right, the sound came into the language. Many other examples can be cited: buzz, hiss, screech. However, language is also onomatopoeic in the sense that it reflects certain emotions. Sometimes when it hurts so much, you say ouch. So the word ouch, to reflect pain, also is reflected in the language. Another thing is that the natural sound source states that language reflects the sounds made from physical effort, especially by a group of people. You consider this example. For example, when a group of people were trying to push or pull something heavy, they have to make sounds together. Think about a boat race. When the people try to race against the other competitors, they have to make sounds, they have to shout together. And in these processes, they were making sounds, and these sounds came to become words like yo, heave, ho, heave, yo. That must be. So the natural sound source certainly makes sense in a way that it does reflect language in the first stages of development. Now we're coming to the third source, the oral gesture source. How do we understand oral gesture? Certainly oral is related to the mouth, oral, the oral cavity. And gesture means what you do with your hand, with your fingers, like this. So oral gesture, what is meant by oral gesture? Basically it means whatever your mouth gestures do, it reflects the physical gestures that your hands can make. So for example, a simple goodbye waving can be reflected, can be accompanied by the sounds, by the gestures made by the mouth. Goodbye. They say that the waving of the hand is reflected in the movement of the mouth, of the lips. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Do you see the similarity? No, I don't. There is no similarity between such. Personally, I do not think that this is a highly credible theory. And that's why we need to take a look at the last source of the development of language, physiological adaptation. When we say physiological adaptation, we talk about the physiology of our body. And when we say physiology, we think about the different organs inside our body, especially with the speech organs. Human beings are different from animals in the sense that we have upright teeth. Our teeth are upright. They do not slant forward. They do not protrude forward, which makes it easier for us to pronounce speech. For the tongue to touch the teeth in order to create certain sounds, like f and v. Furthermore, we have lips with highly intricate muscles, which can help us to produce a variety of sounds, like b, m, p. Furthermore, we have big larynx and pharynx, which can help us produce sound much easier. Basically, when we talk about larynx and pharynx, we talk about the mouth cavity, which can be used as an organ to resonate sounds. It's like an oral vacuum, like the vacuum cleaner, vacuum. It's an oral cavity for us, for the sounds to resonate and for the volume to become bigger. As well as for the air to come forward from the lungs, out through the mouth, larynx and pharynx. But the most important feature of the human physiology is that of the brain. Our brains are said to be lateralized, meaning it is separated into different parts. The right brain hemisphere and the left brain hemisphere serve very different functions, and therefore it is highly specialized, especially when we think about the process of making speech and languages. So what? So far, we have seen different sources as proposed by different linguists around the world regarding how language first came into being. We can see that during the process of development of the language, certainly it does reflect the sounds of nature. It also does reflect the sounds and is the sounds made when we have certain gestures. It is accompanied by different gestures as well. And certainly we humans have very special speech organs that help us to pronounce speech, to create language and to produce language. Animals cannot do this very easily. Well, they can mimic somehow, but certainly they cannot have a sophisticated sound system and sophisticated sound organs like we do. And so we say that in terms of the origins of language, we have the natural origin, the physiological origin as well. And so today we have taken a very brief look at the origins of languages. If you want more details regarding this matter, you can find a book by George Yule, The Study of Language, which is available at my place. You can contact me for further information. Thank you very much and goodbye for now.